Welcome back to Spotlight, where we feature the University of Central Arkansas's College of Fine Arts and Communication. I'm Donna Lampkin-Stevens. Today we are going to meet the new interim director of the Baum Gallery, Brian Young. So Brian, welcome to your first visit to Spotlight.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why you're here. Barclay McConnell, our old friend, left unexpectedly over the summer. So tell us how you found out about this position and why you wanted it.
So I had moved back to Arkansas in January of this year, and I was cobbling together a career, and it was great. I was also a stay-at-home dad, but I became aware from an acquaintance, really, that they were looking for somebody kind of quickly at the Baum Gallery.
Because this happened July, August?
Right, and so I had found out, and in fact, I didn't even wait to call anybody. I just sent in my resume and some materials, and to the attention of the hiring committee, and so I got their attention, and they gave me an interview and said, you know, we'd like to offer you the position on an interim basis, and then when that expires, then you can apply to be the full-time director.
Okay, so and that's typical when we have a late opening like that. It's typical for a one-year interim hire. That's just the way things are done around here.
Good to hear.
So, well, Brian, tell us your background. I know you have some Arkansas background, but you were born in Michigan.
Right, I was born in a suburb of Detroit, and then went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
To study?
To study art history.
Okay.
And then I went to Ohio State for graduate studies, and really began my full-time museum career at the Columbus Museum of Art.
While you were in graduate school?
While I was in graduate school. And then I began to teach adjunct at Ohio Dominican University. So I built up some teaching experience and built up my museum experience, but I really wanted to be a curator more than anything. And so I took a position in 1997 as the curator for the Arkansas Art Center in Little Rock.
Okay, so that's how you wound up here the first time. Well,
Right.
let's back up. Why art history to start with? What did you, I mean, were you an art maker?
No, I've never made art.
I think that's interesting that a lot of art historians have not done that.
I know, and it used to be the norm when the art history programs in this country were dominated by the Ivy League. It was kind of a field for the well-off, right? And they weren't art makers. They were people who studied at Harvard or Princeton, and they helped establish some of these great college and university museums, and then they would also serve as curators for the major metropolitan museums. So they weren't expected to be printmakers or sculptors, or they were ivory tower folks.
Did they look down on them?
I don't know.
Maybe in the past
maybe
they
in the
did?
past
Yeah.
they did, and then as other schools like the University of Michigan tried to emulate these ivory tower, Ivy League, they also didn't have the requirement that you had to be an art maker to be an art historian. In fact, they wanted you to learn German or to maybe take history and that kind of thing.
You just bring a completely different perspective.
Right. So it makes sense to take art classes if you're going to be a curator, especially for contemporary. But when I started out, I was studying Renaissance and Baroque painting. So, the idea that I would learn how to make a fresco didn't seem too practical.
Sure. So why museum work? What intrigued you about that?
So when I went to the University of Michigan to study business, and I needed
originally?
Yeah.
Really?
And I needed humanities credits. I took art history.
Oh, so you fell into it.
Yeah, I fell into it. And so that kind of started it. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be an art history major, then I took a work study position at the University of Michigan Museum of Art. So that's how that started.
Okay.
And once I started working for the museum, I was hooked. And now, I haven't stopped working for museums since.
Okay. So you come to Arkansas in 1997.
Yes.
You didn't know a soul.
Right.
What was the position and why were you interested in that?
It was curator of art for the Arkansas Art Center, primarily for drawings, because that's one of their two specialties, excuse me. And the other specialty is contemporary craft, but they had a separate curator for that. And I got to help plan exhibitions, help with the acquisitions for the permanent collection, and just kind of begin the career where I wanted it to be.
And you loved, and you were here long enough to really sort of have some roots. I mean, what,
Right.
8 years, 8.5 years?
Exactly.
So you met your wife. Tell me about that.
So I met her.
What's her name?
Molly Deere.
Okay.
I met her shortly after, and she was in the membership. So we weren't in the same department or anything, but we got to know each other and began to date. So we're on 2003, I think it was.
Okay. And then why did you leave?
We left, there was a position that opened up at Cranbrook Art Museum outside of Detroit. Somewhat of a coincidence, but it presented an opportunity that at the time I couldn't seem to pass up. But it ended not well because it was right before the Great Recession.
Oh.
And Detroit got hit before the rest of the country, and so I ended up being laid off.
Oh.
So
Join the club.
right. So
It happens to us all. So then what? I mean, you had interrupted your whole life.
right. So then we relocated to Maryland, and my wife decided to go to law school, and so she changed her career, and so I wanted to find a museum to work for that would be near different law schools, so she could apply to different law schools. So our moving pieces became a little more complicated, but
Sure.
it kind of makes life exciting.
Oh yeah, and you should do that when you're young and
Right.
Really encumbered by children and things like that.
Right, that was
so
the case.
so then she finished law school,
Right.
and she's the reason that you're in Arkansas this time. Is that right?
Right. So we were living in Baltimore and had started a family and had a house there, and then she was offered a position for a financial firm in Little Rock, and we just couldn't turn it down. Plus the lure of family.
Sure.
And I had lived in Little Rock before, and so I could be a stay-at-home dad and cobble together different parts of a career, and then just be patient. And as it turns out, it paid
It
off.
worked.
Yeah.
So tell us about the kiddos. How many?
We have two.
Okay.
We have a 3-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting at home teaching online with the University of Maryland.
Right.
Doing some art appraisal.
Right.
Doing some freelance, just freelance work.
Yeah.
And you get a phone call, and you knew of the Baum Gallery. How?
I knew the Baum Gallery because I used to communicate with some of my peers when I was at the Arkansas Art Center. So I knew the director at UALR, I knew the director at UCA, I knew the director at the ASU. It's now called the Bradbury Museum in Jonesboro. So you keep in touch with your colleagues. And so, but somebody in the private sector said they heard that they're hiring at the Baum, and I hurried along and got my materials in before I was asked. And was lucky enough to get an interview.
And so, what do you think about the Baum? I mean, as someone who's sort of been from the outside, but a peer, what reputation does the Baum Gallery have around the state?
It has a reputation for pushing contemporary work to benefit both the students and the people of Conway as a whole. And if people are paying attention in Little Rock and the surrounding counties, it's a great destination spot to see additional good art. Sometimes regional museums get a reputation undeservedly for just showing local folks, right? And the Baum, I think, consciously tries to show work on a national scale. So that's to be commended.
Great. That's
Yeah.
great. And speaking of that, we as we shoot this, we have our opening exhibit this fall is Curious Devotion.
Right.
Tell us about that. It's up through October 20th.
Right, and so that exhibition was curated by a member of the Fine Art Department, Sandra Luckett, and it features 3 artists that she knows personally, and they're kind of professional colleagues.
From away.
Yeah, so one is a professor at the Heron Art Gallery in Indiana. Another one teaches Parsons in New York, and the third one is a professor at the University of Ozarks. So it's Don Holder at the Ozarks, Danielle Reedy at Heron, and it is Langdon Graves, who teaches at Parsons. And all 3 are also, they are artists for a living, so they have certain credibility, but the fact that they're also teachers. So our work study students and the fine art students got to have some interaction with these individuals and see how professional artists put together an installation. And that's, I think, a really valuable resource to bring to the Baum.
Let's talk about the timeline. Now, obviously, you didn't plan this because it was already long in the works.
Right.
So, what is the timeline on planning exhibits that are going to be at the Baum in the future?
So you need to have enough time to get on the artist schedule, and then also enough time to plan out. So typically, it's a year or more.
Okay.
And it gives everybody enough time. It gives artists enough time to create enough material for an exhibition, to get their work framed, to get the work shipped and plan the whole idea through. And then it gives the gallery director enough time to kind of get the moving pieces together so that you can figure out who's going in what gallery, how much size each person, what kind of scale their work is. So for me, I got here just before the exhibition opened. So
was it already installed? when you got
no,
here?
it was.
Okay.
I started, then shortly thereafter, the installation began.
And we have three separate spaces in the
Right.
BOM, and so we have one per artist
Correct.
for this one. Okay.
Yeah.
So how would you describe this exhibit? What can people look for if they come by the BOM before October 20th?
I think the first thing they can look for is a way that each of these artists seems to eradicate the clear divisions a lot of people make about art, that we define ourselves as a printmaker or a painter or a sculptor. And in this case, these artists combine different media. So Daniel Reedy is both a painter, and she also she takes materials that other artists have discarded and she glues them onto the wall. And so it defies what is sculpture, it defies what is high art. Because
Literally glues them to the wall.
literally glues them to the
Okay.
wall. So you're left wondering whether or not it's found art, because she's taken these objects somebody else has discarded. She's glued them onto the wall. So does that make them sculpture? Yeah, essentially, because it's tactile, it's three-dimensional, but they're still on a two-dimensional surface. And then in the next exhibition, you have a woman who is best known as a draftsperson, somebody who draws, but she also incorporates her own wallpaper. She has had a wall built for the exhibition. She painted the walls, and then she adds her own sculpture. So she also kind of defies what are the different disciplines, right? And then lastly, Dawn Holder is a ceramist, but in some ways she defies the traditional roles of ceramics, because we think of that art form as being largely utilitarian. Think of teacup and saucer, or think of things like that, or even vases. But hers, she has in some small measure recreated the backyard of a suburban home out of clay, where she seems to have cast all the individual blades of grass into small square groupings and then reassembled those together. And each one, too, is quite ambitious, that they've overseen the entire gallery installation rather than leaving it to somebody else. So that's a good lesson for BFA students as well.
Now, we really started off with a bang
Right.
in a lot of ways in the College of Fine Arts and Communication this fall. But David Gravy, his work is not in the BOM Gallery because it's outdoor public art installation. But talk about his work, which is going to be up through October the 11th. But he's also coming back for a lecture.
Right, he comes back for a lecture on October 7th, and right next to the BOM Gallery. So his work are essentially giant balloons with printed images of people both from this community and outside the community that he's installed in front of the Torreson Library, at UCA downtown, at the Federal Building, and at the Institute for
Independent Living Services.
Yes.
And this is part of Arts Fest.
Right. And so he wants to engage the community. He wants to bridge the distance between the BOM Gallery campus and also the downtown campus. So and his work also kind of defies different categories. In some ways it's like a print, because he has those images put on there, or a photograph. In other ways it's kind of installation work, just like the three artists we've already discussed. And so he also has a community component. That is part of the work, that he wants to engage with people, hence the ILS connection. So he defies what we consider as somebody who might make a work and then kind of, hand it off to somebody to install it in a gallery or in a museum, and then, they're both in different locations. And he comes and he installs.
I mean, he literally, we met
Right.
them. Some of my students and I were over when he was working on the installation. And
Correct.
that's the hard work is, I mean, the installation, you don't think about it as being really, really hard work, but I saw them doing hard work.
Right. I mean, they're going up in lifts, they're using compressors.
Sweating.
Right, using kind of toxic kind of materials as well. So, yeah, he's quite an ambitious individual.
And so that's been well received around campus. And, and let's just say, I've not seen it at night before, but I understand it's a completely different, you look at it during the day and it's one thing, and so come back and see it, at night as well.
Right, there's kind of an ambient lighting to some of the larger balloons, so they seem to just kind of float, as balloons do, but they seem to kind of float among the trees and then images of people, so it's different than just an orb of color.
So come see it twice.
Please,
really, yeah. So, and then Our next, are you teaching, Brian?
I am. I'm teaching an art appreciation course.
Okay, and so the next show that we always enjoy is the BA BFA that our students do every semester. That's coming up in November.
That
Opens
right.
in November.
Yes.
And it runs essentially the rest of the semester.
Correct.
Okay, so tell us about. As the new director, I assume you don't know a lot of these students who are about to graduate.
Right.
So tell us how that works. They have to have something chosen for the exhibit in order to earn their degree.
Right. So
Is that typical?
I think it is.
Okay.
And when I was at Cranbrook, the MFA students had to do the same
Okay.
thing. So the students will work with their professor, and they'll work together to find work that will be for the installation. So I won't be the curator of that show so
Right.
much. I don't select the work. However, I do work with the students to install the works together so that it makes a cohesive exhibition. That is to say, they don't just all 12 or 13 of them come together and figure out who gets what space.
Right.
That's kind of my job.
You're the middleman.
I'm the middleman, precisely. And so my job is to make sure that their work looks good side by side. And it's my job to want to give them the best possible museum show they can have.
Yeah.
And their job is just to do the best job they can to put their kind of creative foot forward. So it's kind of a team effort between their professors, myself, and of course the creators of the work.
So at this point, which we're about a month out from the installation, are you involved in that yet? How does the process work? I mean, do you know what to expect or not yet? Okay.
I'm getting emails from the students. I'm going
Okay.
to meet with all of them individually, and I'm going to find out what scale their work is, if they have any unusual components, do they have anything kinetic in the work, do they need an electrical outlet.
I mean, and we've seen some amazing stuff in previous semesters. I mean, things that you would never think of as really as art.
Right. So, and I want to kind of see what relationships are formed among the different students so that I can put the works next to each other so that they're complementary rather than
Yes.
visually fighting each other.
Yes.
So, and want to see the scale. So the bigger works presumably could get into a bigger space. Works that maybe a little bit more domestic and might be in one of the smaller galleries. And so it's that kind of, it's an organic process.
So Brian, everything comes down. So we have in late October.
Correct.
And then there's a couple of weeks there when there's nothing on. What goes on during those times?
We'll repair any of the walls that we need to.
That you hadn't thought about. I mean, I wouldn't think about something like that, but obviously you have to.
So in the case of Langdon Graves' work, we're going to take out a temporary wall.
Okay.
So break that up, and then repaint all of her yellow and pink and bluish green paint, and then Dawn Holder has two walls that are blue, so we'll put those back to white.
Do you do that?
We'll do it with work study students.
Okay,
And
okay.
yeah, people like that.
Okay.
And so we'll put them back and get them ready for the next.
For the BA, BFA. Okay. So, what? Just very quickly, and we'll have you back on again in the spring to talk about this. But what about the exhibits for the spring? I mean, they open pretty quickly after we come back from the holidays, right?
Right. And so the ones for the spring, I have to remember who we have back on the board.
That's okay.
But
if you're not. I think
would
I
hate
sprang
to-
this one on you.
No, that's okay. I would hate to misspeak. That could be one of the. That could be a bad omen. But just give me a second to think. But maybe we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay, so so as the interim director, are you working a year out to sort of plan for things that are coming in? I mean, how are you looking to the future now in your interim position?
So coincidentally, perhaps we have an exhibitions committee meeting.
Okay.
So there are typically 3 faculty members.
From the Department of Art.
Right. And then sometimes we include an intern or work study student.
Okay.
And so we'll get together and we'll see what opportunities are presented to us, what ideas they have, what ideas have been presented to us collectively, and find out, figure out what's been done in the past. We don't want to be too repetitious.
Right, right.
What's already in the books in the future, and then fill those gaps and try to, again, think about who our audience is, which is our students, our other faculty members, and people from other departments, and then Conway and Central Arkansas as a whole. And then, so figure out what's been done, what we want to do moving forward, who's available, and we also want to consider space, budget, and that kind of thing.
So is that a one meeting process, or is this an
We meet
ongoing?
It's ongoing.
Okay.
We meet about once a month or so. And it's a little bit informal, but we do vote, and usually the consensus wins out. And we try to plan at least a year out, typically more. We're already into 2019.
Okay. Okay. And you're here on an interim basis, but have you enjoyed it enough to want to be a candidate for the permanent position?
Yes.
Okay.
Make a short answer.
Good.
No, I've enjoyed it. It's great, and everyone's made me feel kind of like I've been here for a while. They've been supportive, but the relationships seem to have come pretty easy.
And I think it's interesting when you get people from different perspectives who've been different places to come in and bring new ideas and new thoughts. I think that's always healthy and good, exciting.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know some of the the artists from Central Arkansas, whether it's faculty here. I've met them before. I've seen their work for quite some time. I know who some of the leading artists are in Central Arkansas. I've also been gone for a while, so I
Sure.
have to catch up.
Yeah.
And I have to see who some of the.
So do you how do you do that? Do you just talk to people? Do you go to other events, other openings? And I mean, how do you do your homework, I guess?
So you do your homework by just getting in your car and going to different places.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I joined the Friends of Contemporary Craft at the Arkansas Art Center. I joined their contemporaries group. I've already met with the director at UALR, and so I've gone to.
Is that person the same as it was before you?
Brad
when you-
Cushman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've made contact with the person at the ASU museum, so I'm going to go back and visit them and reconnect with some other colleagues. But I also go to the galleries in Little Rock, and I try to visit artist studios when I can, especially if I'm invited. I almost never turn that down. So you just kind of make yourself available if you can.
What have you, since you've been here, and you're beginning to work with UCA art students? And in the past, we've had students go on to great internships, other places to work with other artists nationally. What sets our art students apart? Have you been able to figure that out? And maybe from your past, the past times that you visited the BOM or talked to Barbara Satterfield or Barkley or Garland Jenkins. So what is it about UCA art students?
I think the one thing I really like is the number of work study students who want to work for the BOM. They want to see how museums work. They want to see how artists tick, what makes them tick. So when we had David Gravy and we had Adam Hogan, the film artist, and we had before that Langdon Graves, people they want to help.
Now, are these art students who are work study students, or just anybody?
Yeah. They're all UCA students.
Right.
But the ones from the Fine Art Department in particular, they really want to see the whole process, how artists begin an installation, how they finish it, and how museums click and how they work. I mean, we have work study students from different disciplines, but I love the curiosity, the enthusiasm, and they bring a certain spark. And that's always fun. No matter what task there is, they always seem to want to jump in, and they've kind of saved me in this early thing.
I bet. Now, I assume the University of Michigan Museum was huge.
It is a large university
yeah.
museum, yeah.
So how is that? I mean, how does that compare from working at a larger place and also coming here and sort of being the person in charge here? So does that change sort of how you approach your position? A
little bit. The scale's changed, and the University of Michigan Museum of Art has a really large permanent collection. So you have to have that responsibility as well.
Which we don't have.
There is one.
There is one.
But
okay.
there isn't, let's say, a designated space for that permanent collection.
So that anybody could go anytime to see the permanent collection. It has to be out on okay, I see.
Right, and so, and then with the BOM Gallery, much of the focus really is on the art of here and now, contemporary, what's being done. And so it's a living, breathing kind of museum. It's a place that there's a lot of life and activity, right? And so there's these artists kind of coming in and coming out, and there's a lot of lectures and talks and roundtable discussions and things like that. And that's kind of the identity, that it's a living, breathing place.
And when these artists, they are literally our artists in residence, like David Gravy and
right.
Langdon Graves, and what did the kids get out? What did the students get out of hearing these artists come back to lecture? Because I think every one of them has a public lecture associated.
Right. Number one, they're established artists, but they're also young enough that
To relate.
they can relate to them. At least that's the way that I see it. You know, maybe I think I relate to them, and maybe I don't. But but I do see that. I see that they view these individuals as having a great deal of energy, and they're committed to their craft, right? And they come in and they show their drive, their professionalism, and they show their skill. I mean, these are really talented artists, and they're really committed. Like the idea that Dawn Holder is going to cast her backyard in clay, or the fact that Langdon is going to design her own wallpaper and integrate all these different components together is really, I think, an inspiration. So
Good.
That's
And
what I
that's
think.
what we want from this whole Artist in
Yes.
Residence program.
So in that sense, they're really well selected.
Good.
Which is different than saying, I think so-and-so does great work, we should have that work shipped here and then put it on view. I mean, there is a component of that, and I get it, but these 5 artists, they come with their work and their energy and their professionalism.
That's much better. I hadn't even thought about I guess some places just get them in the mail and they
Right.
install them, and then,
Right.
and you never have a chance to meet the artist. So
Right.
that's good. That's good. So before we go, let's do the hours of the Baum Gallery. It's free to the public and to the UCA community.
Right. It's free to everybody. Monday through Friday, 10 to 5, with extended hours on Thursday evenings until 7 p.m.
And no weekends except when we have receptions, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And is there a website that they can go to, the public, to see everything on our schedule?
Yes, just type in Baum Gallery UCA in your web browser, and it's going to pop right up.
Very good. Well, Brian, thanks for joining us. We will
Thank
see
you.
you later in a few weeks to talk about the BA BFA. We will be on location at the Baum Gallery, which is always a fun edition of Spotlight. So we will see you again, and thank you for joining us this time on Spotlight.